What is anarchism? Why is it important spiritually? Why do we even believe in authority? Do we need to be ruled? Or are we actually able to govern ourselves under natural law? Come on, let's access the anarchist within. Welcome to Accessing the Akashic Records, episode 18. What is anarchism and why is it important spiritually? So since the time of anarchist Mikhail Bakunin and other people that have used violence as a means of achieving anarchy or advocated for a means of achieving anarchy, many statists and other government advocates have actually obfuscated the term anarchy and led the world to believe that it actually means chaos, violence, lawlessness, and that type of thing, when this is actually very much counter to the actual meaning. So, as always, the key to understanding anything is to break it down and go into definition through etymology. So, an comes from the Greek prefix meaning with or absence of, and archon meaning lord, ruler, or master. So it actually means without rulers or masters. So anarchy is actually commonly understood to be the non-belief in authority, which logically means the inherent nature of mankind is equality, as in rights. So as no one has more or less rights than any other person. So essentially we could say anarchists are actually the atheists of the religion that is authority. Now let's define authority, because I'm talking about the illegitimate type where certain people have more rights than others, because there's certainly situations where people with certain skills or knowledge that makes them more suited to take charge in a situation. One is earned, situational, and can be questioned and challenged. And the other is actually given, unquestionable, and it's actually inequitable. The difference between leadership and authority are two different things. Yes, anarchists would actually debate this fact and say both are irrelevant. However, I do not. So there's a distinguishment there that needs to be made. So authority in the dictionary says that power or right to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience. A person or organisation having political or administrative power and control. Authority is the legitimate power, take note of that word, legitimate power, because I'll discuss that more later, which one person or group possesses and practices over another. A civil state usually makes this formal by way of a judicial branch and an executive branch of government. In the exercise of governance, the terms authority and power sometimes are inaccurately used as synonyms. Notice how they contradict themselves there by saying, first of all, it is legitimate power, then say authority and power are inaccurately used as synonyms. What? This also points out for us how government is the exact same type of authority in which I'm referring to as a right to rule, where some have rights that no human inherently has. Therefore, it is indisputable that it is illegitimate and exists in nothing but faith alone. So this is a prime example of a service to self, negative or left-hand path system of control, because it's actually in opposition to natural law. Now, if you're not familiar with natural law, please go back and watch those episodes. Now, left-hand path, black magic, is another term for it, works via deception and control. If it is to work on a person, the person must believe it exists, as that is precisely how it gets its power. So legitimate power, as they were calling in the dictionary, is actually black magic. So authority is literally black magic, just like money is. But, that's another topic in itself for outside of the purview of this episode, and I can cover that if you guys would like. Now, I know a lot of you may be indoctrinated, some of you may not be, but you may be coming up with all these questions, but I thought we vote them in, so that's democracy. And you'll have these kind of questions coming up because you've been indoctrinated by it all and been exposed to it your whole lives and know nothing different, that's all. So I'll just address a couple of the three main status arguments that tend to come up and are actually quite illogical when you break it down. So the first one, we elected the government via voting. So it doesn't matter if humanity gets to vote for whichever slave master rules us. The fact remains authority, where one has a right to rule, is in actual opposition to natural law. Thus, government is actually a left-hand path control and system, and consequently slavery of the mind, body and spirit. Now, if your candidate was to win, then your agenda is forced upon those who didn't actually pick the winner, and vice versa. If you didn't pick the winner, then your views are their views are forced upon you and anyone else who didn't vote for them. So, call it democracy, but it's nothing more than an illusion of choice. Now, two, our taxation is because we're actually provided with public services. So the good old social contract theory. Now, imagine with me if we hired a private corporation of politicians who did things from low-level loophole exploitation to the more serious money laundering, filtering money into their own back pockets under the guise of government contracts and foreign aid or phony programs and things like that, to the more heinous acts of funding terrorism, generating war, human trafficking, and ultimately engaging in pedophilia. Then imagine with me a private police service that takes bribes to turn a blind eye, intimidates, assaults, rapes, murders of citizens it's actually employed to protect. Or a private military that invades on false pretenses, intimidates, tortures, assaults, rapes and murders innocent civilians, let alone the actual combatants themselves. So if you view those things as arms of the one private corporation that operates on involuntary donation, as it does at the moment, what do you think if we had a private organisation that operated on voluntary donation, where the people actually hired them to provide these services? Would they actually still be employed for doing exactly what government is currently doing under those arms, under those branches? Of course not. There's no difference. The main difference here is that taxation versus voluntary donation. One, you can have a say, the other you don't. It's that simple. One is by coercion, and the other is consent. One is control, the other is freedom. The last point that a lot of people tend to come up with is that people are corrupt, violent, and just plain bad, and we need government to control them and create laws and stop people from killing each other and being savages. I don't know about you, but I know how to treat people right and wrong. I know theft, murder, lying, just harm in general is not the way to treat other people. And I don't need laws stating that fact. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, the logic, basically that people are inherently corrupt. So let's get a subset of those people to control the rest, and that'll just fix it. That demonstrates just how far we still have to go in removing this religion, because that logic is really the epitome of dogma. If you remember the saying, power corrupts absolutely, and absolute power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That means exactly what I'm talking about, if you understand what that's saying. So if you give someone absolute powers, which is what government is, has rights that no other human being has, you give them to people, give those rights to people, and they'll just destroy the world. It corrupts them. So let's turn this perspective 180, because basically I hazard to posit that if we did not have these such obvious inequalities created by this religion of authority, then the majority of the world's problems would actually cease to exist. So no authority or government actually wants true peace, justice, freedom, and equality, as itself would actually cease to exist, because government is literally the monopoly on violence, war, inequality, and slavery. So how has this religion actually taken a hold over the majority of humanity? Well, introducing the Prussian education obedience indoctrination system. Quite a mouthful. Well, that's not what it's actually known as, that's what I call it. It was first created in Prussia in the 18th century, which is now known as Germany, as a means of creating a productive country for the expansion of government power. This was done with the model of military obedience, where students had desks lined up in rows, must stand when the teacher walks in, only speak when called upon to do so, and many, many, many more obedience to authority indoctrinating methods. So that produces people which wouldn't question the religion of authority, and thus be perfect workers and potential military members and police members and those law enforcers, all of which are helpful in furthering the government agenda. And this system caught a lot of attention by other countries and was implemented throughout the Western world and the majority of the world actually under the guise of the Rockefeller modern education system. As always, the links for everything I'm talking about will be under the video, wherever you're watching it. So this leads us to the order followers. As we look back at structures of authority, we see there was first a priest caste that was at the top of the authoritarian pyramid, telling the masses they were ordained rightful interpreters of spirituality. Then it was the monarchy, where kings and queens claimed the divine right of kings, telling the masses they are going to do the will of God through their actions. Then came the formation of government, which told the masses it is doing the will of the majority or the masses, and it gave itself rights that no human actually has. So it doesn't matter what's at the top of the pyramid of the authoritarian control, priest, pharaoh, Caesar, emperor, king, president, prime minister, or otherwise. Nobody has the right to infringe upon free will of another, let alone the majority of a country or planet. Now I digress, because the problem isn't so much the person at the top of the pyramid as much as it is the fact that the people that have been led to believe in the religious dogma that authority exists and therefore it compels them to obey it. If nobody actually believed in this religion, then there wouldn't be millions to do their unquestioned bidding. How many times have we had order followers that have said, if you want to keep your job, you'll just do what you're told, or as I was told in the army, you don't have a need to know. So we're just basically expected not only to leave our questions to authority, but our morals and our conscience at the door. Sounds like handing your body over to the will of some evil entity, am I right? Sounds satanic much? This does, however, give the order followers a way to absolve themselves in their morals and conscience, because they're just following orders. And we all know how well that worked for the Nazis in the Nuremberg trials. This lack of self-responsibility, self-ownership, and not knowing thyself is one of the biggest parts of this problem in belief in authority. It leads people down the dangerous path of thinking it's fine to say that it's the government's responsibility, or I'm not involved in that, so that's for the cops to sort out. I'm not going to get involved. Anyone who is actually willing to put their morals and conscience aside to carry out the immoral orders of so-called authority will be the ones who bear the greatest consequence in regard to karma, as it is in opposition to natural law and right-hand path philosophy or dharma. So, in order to move forward, I want to go back to what I was talking about with knowing thyself. So what does that mean? Well, know thyself is the maximum of the Oracle of Delphi, which states, "Heed these words, you who wish to probe the depths of nature. If you do not find within yourself that which you seek, neither will you find it outside. If you ignore the wonders of your own house, how do you expect to find other wonders? In you is hidden the treasure of treasures. Know thyself, and you will know the universe and the gods." So to know yourself is to analyze yourself, your thoughts, your actions, what you do and do not do, what you stand for, what you don't, and why. So for humanity to actually grow up, we need to stop believing in authority and take responsibility and ownership seriously. We need to understand objective morality that exists in natural law and how to apply it in our lives, because it is inseparable, or more accurately put, it is a reciprocal system with freedom. As you can see here, the law of freedom. Freedom and morality are directly proportional. As morality increases, freedom increases. As morality declines, freedom declines. And you'll see it in the world. You can see it's very evident. True freedom can never exist in a society that embraces moral relativism. So moral relativism is the idea that there's no inherent objective difference between right and wrong. So humanity may arbitrarily create or decide right and wrong for themselves. Now, as I showed in the episode on natural law, that does not mean that we do not have subjective morality. But subjective morality is secondary or subordinate, as in it's not universal in creation. So therefore, it doesn't matter. You have to accept the objective nature in reality. What you see subjectively is not the whole picture. It's two halves to a whole. And it's the same for truth. There's the objective truth and then there's your subjective truth. But the objective truth is what is truth. I mean, I'm going to go into this. I'm going to go into objective truth. And once I've completed this Anarchism trilogy. So this episode's on Anarchism. Next one will be on voluntarism, and then the last one is on agorism. So once I've done that, I'll be going into Know Thyself series. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be probably the best yet. Basically, that's all I had for this episode. So thank you for watching, and I hope this episode actually sparks something within you to create positive change so we can see more of it in this reality we exist in. All links to everything I covered in the episode will be in the description box below, so you can do your own research, because as I always say, don't believe me, find out for yourself. But please hit like, subscribe, share this around and implement it into your life. I see you, other self. I love you. Love and light. See you in the next episode on voluntarism.